Hello, Kevin here. Today I'll be sharing with you how to use the EQ session on the mixing console. I'll also be sharing with you towards the end of the video a couple of very important things to consider when using EQ for live sound. So you might want to watch this video till the end to find out. Let's jump right into it. The human ears can detect sounds in the frequency range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz. And so an equalizer, or EQ for short, can be used to increase or decrease the volume of specific frequency bands within the audio signal. And this can be done to either cure the audio signal of offending frequencies or noise, so that the overall sound can be improved. Or it can also be used to shape the entire tonality of the sound to provide a pleasant listening experience. In other words, an EQ can be said to be a frequency-specific volume control. One very important thing to consider with using EQ is that less is better. Now, I've seen a lot of people get tricked into believing that because there are EQ controls on every single channel strip in a mixing console, every knob has to be turned. That's not necessarily true. Remember I said an EQ is a frequency-specific volume control. By overusing an EQ, you can mess up your entire gain structure and ruin your mix in the process, which isn't something anyone would want. Now, another thing that's worth mentioning is that when using EQ, you have to be subtle in turning those knobs, because any sudden change can cause unpleasant feedback, which is capable of damaging your equipment.
Now let's demonstrate EQ using the Yamaha MG24 14FX mixing console. I've plugged the microphone to channel 12 of the mixer. And for this mixer, its EQ controls are highlighted with the green color. And this channel has 4 rotary controls. There are 3 bands to this EQ: high, mid, and low, all referring to the audio frequencies they are going to adjust. And each band allows for cut and boost for the specific frequencies. Now, when it comes to EQ, probably one of the most important control is the high pass filter. The high pass filter for this mixer is set at 80 Hz, and it is represented by this button here. And so when you engage the high pass filter, what it does is that it cuts all frequencies below 80 Hz in a steady downward slope, just as shown in the frequency graph here. And so the farther the frequency is from 80 Hz downwards, the greater the cut. Now, it is important to note that the high pass filter should be engaged for all inputs except for bass instruments such as kick drum, bass, guitar, and maybe floor tom and music playback devices. Now, this is really important for cleaning up a muddy mix, because, for example, if you are in a stage and the microphone is picking up lots of low frequency noise from, let's say, a bass guitar amplifier on stage, the high pass filter can help to a great extent to clean up the mix by rejecting those low frequency pickup that the mic is actually getting. So it's very, very important to engage the high pass filter for all inputs except for bass instruments. The high band is set at 10 kHz, and so when I boost, I'm boosting 10 kHz. When I cut, I'm cutting 10 kHz. Now, this is used to make your audio signal sound either brighter or duller. While for the low band is set at 100 Hz. And so when I boost, I'm boosting 100 Hz, as you can hear. And when I cut, I'm cutting 100 Hz rather. This could provide a deeper, stronger sound for low instruments, while reducing it could provide greater clarity to vocals and mid to high pitched instrument, just as you can hear right now. Typically in a live sound situation, it is better to cut this for vocals so as to make the sound or the voices clearer. And for bass instrument, you can use to add a little bit of boomy effect or depth to it. Now, both high and low bands are often referred to as high shelf and low shelf. Now, this is because their slope, as you can see from the graph, looks like a shelf shape. It's sort of slope leading to a flat line. Now, the shelf applies the same amount of cut or boost to the frequencies beyond the stated assigned frequencies. So for the high band for this mixer, it applies the same amount of cut or boost to all frequencies above 10 kHz. though the change could be gradual at first, and the same thing applies for the low shelf as well. Now, the mid band is quite special because it involves two knobs, and this can actually throw lots of people off and make it confusing sometimes. Now, it is sweepable. What this means is that one of the knobs actually adjusts the frequency. So the first knob here selects the frequency you want to either boost or cut. And for this mixer, it ranges from 250 hertz when you go all the way to the left, all the way to 5 kilohertz when you go all the way to the right. And then the second knob is used to either boost the selected frequency or to cut the selected frequency. From the frequency graph, the mid band has a bell shape, and so it affects, boosting or cutting it affects the selected frequency the most, while affecting the adjacent frequencies a little less. And so there are basically two ways to use this. First of all is that you find the frequency that sounds the best and you boost it. By doing this, the way you do this is this: you apply a little bit of boost, and then you sweep to select the frequency that you feel sounds the best. And when you find the frequency, you leave it there. And then the second way you use this mid band is that you find the frequency that sounds the worst and then you cut it. And for live sound situation, this is probably the approach you will take, because it is better to cut than to boost. I'll talk more about it later before the end of the video. So the way you do that is similar. You apply a little bit of boost and then you sweep to find the part of the signal that sounds the worst. And right now I think 500 hertz, 250, 300 sounds really muddy and crazy. And then you cut, you take it from boost to cut, and then your signal sounds a whole lot better.
Now, here are some very important things I believe you should consider when using an EQ in a live sound situation. Number one is that the best approach to EQ is to get it right at the source. Now, what I mean by this is that the right microphone should be used for the right purpose. It is better to get the audio signal sounding the best at the sound source than to attempt to use EQ to correct an already poorly sounding audio signal. With drums, for example, you want to ensure that they are properly tuned and that the right microphone is used for the right drum. Proper placement of microphone is also key, and you might want to experiment to find out what sounds best. Another thing I would like to mention with using EQ for live sound is that cutting is usually better than boosting. It's better to take away stuffs you don't need than to try and add more of something else just to compensate, right? Especially with less expensive mixer, so boosting might mess up your entire gain structure very quickly, and you might find yourself struggling with trying to maintain a mix that is not distorted. If you have to boost an EQ, do it minimally. I usually don't boost higher than 6 dB when mixing live sound. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this video. Since you're here, you can as well click to watch this video on how to set gain on a mixing console, or you can click to watch this other one as well. Other than that, I'm Kelvin. I'll see you in the next video.